Now, for more insight into this week's symposium, we turn now to Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research, who joins us live from World Headquarters in New York. Danielle, thanks so much for being here. Of course, as we head into Friday's speech with Jerome Powell, perhaps overshadowing is these new allegations from President Trump when it comes to Fed Governor Lisa Cook. Just your initial reaction on how investors should be weighing this rhetoric from the administration as we got the minutes today and then Powell's speech on Friday.
Well, I think we're in an interesting time here because the administration probably has a greater appreciation for the history of Marshall Eccles, who in 1948, when Truman booted him out as the chair of the Fed, decided to finish out his 14-year term as a Fed governor. And we know that Jay Powell can stay through the end of January 2028. And as such, it's clear that the administration feels like it needs to make room to put somebody else on the committee that's going to speak in its voice. And I think that is a lot of what's driving this. The Bloomberg terminal had a great story today covering the Philadelphia Fed and some research that it conducted and released in 2023 that shows that these types of this type of mortgage fraud, which is being allocated, that this is in 2 to 3% of the mortgages that have existed after the housing bust of the late 2000s. So it's not crystal clear that the administration will prevail. But it's clear that Trump really wants to change the complexion of the leadership at the Fed one way or another.
Danielle, what do you expect from Chair Jay Powell during his remarks on Friday when it comes to defending Fed independence? This, in a way, will be his valedictory remarks at Jackson Hole as Fed chair. This would be an opportunity, perhaps, for him to lay down more of a marker.
It certainly would. And, indemnifying his legacy is clearly going to be front and center for him. He will lean on the importance of Fed independence. And as your prior guest said, that's going to be extremely important for everybody in the audience as well. He will have a very welcoming audience that also wants to safeguard the independence of the Fed. A lot, I think, also remains on tomorrow morning's data, though. We're going to get the survey week data out for August payrolls in the initial jobless claims data that's released tomorrow. We hope that is as benign as it's been recently. But Powell, given the theme of Jackson Hole, centers on the labor market. Powell certainly doesn't need any more ammunition against him in the hard data.
Well, building off of when we're talking about the labor market, we did, of course, get the FOMC minutes today, the majority seeing inflation risks outweighing employment risks. But they also said, perhaps not surprisingly, that several committee members expected companies will pass on those tariffs to consumers. And I'm wondering which sectors you're watching. But also, I wanted to point out another data point. How does perhaps slower income growth limit the extent to which firms can pass on those costs to consumers?
So I think you bring up a very valid point. It's not that American companies don't want to pass along higher input costs. We're seeing the margin squeeze play out in real time. But to your point, is there purchasing power? The Atlanta Fed wage growth tracker is showing a sustained decline in wage gains all the way back to where we were prior to the pandemic hitting. And you've got multiple record numbers of Americans working multiple jobs, plenty of people working part-time when they would rather have full-time positions. There were 440,000 full-time positions lost in the month of July alone. That purchasing power is absolutely key, and I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing food inflation reignite in areas where you absolutely have no choice but to pass along those higher input costs. Well, it remains to be seen, to me at least, when we're going to see this tariff pass through in more discretionary consumption areas.
Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research. Thank you. Turning overseas now.